In this video, I'm going to show you how to create assemblies, corridors, and how to use the surface to do spot gradings. So let's get started on what an assembly is. So I have a typical roadway section here, and you'll be using this in your design project. In this roadway section, it's a 50-foot right-of-way. There's 2 lanes, drive lanes. They're 11 foot wide with a 2-foot Miami curb, 7 foot of grass that's at 6%, and a 5-foot sidewalk at 2% because it's ADA. And it's basically mirrored about the center line. Now, we also have a typical section that has similar information except for it has parallel parking here. Okay, so in this, I am going to do something a little bit different. I am not going to create this valley gutter here right now. I'm just going to make our life a little bit simpler, and I'm just going to go ahead and make that 6.5 feet. In Osceola County, the parallel parking on the side of the road has to be 8 feet in depth. That means I can use 1.5 feet of the F-type curb as part of my parallel parking. And I still have to have 7 feet of sod. Now that 7 feet of sod is for utility, it's a utility strip. So your storm, your electric, well, typically your electric will go on the outside in a 10-foot utility easement. So it'll be your water, sewer, storm, reuse, anything that we need to put on over here, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Let me move this off a bit. The other thing is in this drawing, and almost every time you'll start a project, you'll already have a surface created. In the design example project, I already have my surface created, and I didn't show you all how to do that. And in our design project that each of us will do in our groups, we also have a surface already created. So you can't do a lot of this work without a surface being created, but I'm not going to take the time to go over surfaces this semester. If anybody wants to know how to create a surface, just reach out to me. All right, so I like to create my assembly, and I like to put it over here next to the profile. Now assembly is, let me go back. An assembly is basically, I'm going to draw 1/2 of the cross section, and I'm going to mirror it by the center line. Now when I mirror, it is not your typical MI command, your mirror command. It is a specific command that has to be done using the assembly toolbox, all right, or tool palette. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be on my home ribbon. I'm going to come up here to assembly. Click on that and create an assembly. I am going to call it, give it a good name. So I'm going to say 50-foot right-of-way, okay? Everything else I'm going to leave as default. I'm going to click. And down here it says baseline assembly location. I'm just going to put it right here. It zooms in on it itself. Now I actually have to go over here to our home tab, our home ribbon again, and right up here it has tool palettes. Click on that and you'll get this tool palette list of assembly parts. You've got assemblies that are already made, but I'm going to create my own because sometimes these don't work for me. So I'm going to go lanes, and I'm going to use the lane super elevation AOR. And click on that. Click on that, and then I'm going to pick the center line. This represents the center line, okay? Now there's my 11-foot lane. I'm going to go ahead and draw out the assembly, and then I'm going to make sure of the dimensions. Now, be aware that there's little circles. These circles are tie-in elevations. So if I wanted to do a cut fill analysis or a quantity takeoff analysis, these help us code what is asphalt, what's base, what's subgrade. I'm not going to worry about that this semester. Let's just talk about the general. Now, after I've got our lane, I'm going to have a curb and gutter. So I'm going to click on curbs, and I am going to do an urban curb gutter valley. This is typically closest to our Miami curb, whereas this is our F curb. All right, so I'm going to click on that, and I am going to click here. Now the next thing is the 7-foot grass strip. There's not excuse me, there's not really a 7-foot grass strip that I've noticed, so I use generic, which is really helpful. So the generic that I'm going to use is going to be length, width, and slope. So that allows me to have a known length and a slope on it. So click that, and then I'm going to click this top line or top circle. These are our codes. Always pick the top line. And then the last one is going to be our sidewalk. Now here's the thing. Don't use the basic sidewalk because it's flat. I don't know where it's at, but don't use that one. Do a basic lane. Yeah, use a basic lane. This should allow me to put a slope on it. Plus I want the thickness. All right. And the last thing I do is I do one more generic. Let me find it. Generic, and I do one more length, width, and slope on the outside edge. Oops, wrong one. You can also delete it. So click that again, zoom in, touch the circle. All right, now let's build it correctly. We're going to take these parameters, the 11, the 2, the 7, and the 5, okay? And then I'm going to give it a distance because this will be my lot grades, which will help me in the grading of each individual lots instead of doing it by hand all the time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. I don't need it for right now. I've got my properties up. So if you don't have your properties palette up, come down here, type in PR. So I'm going to move my tool space over here. I'm going to sync it over here. All right. So I'm going to, whoops. Let me close out. Okay. Sorry. I'm not really good at this whole syncing and hiding. Okay. All right. So I clicked on the lane, and notice over here in my properties, it is a 12-foot width. Well, we don't want 12, we want 11. And it is 2% cross slope. Some roads require, if it's like multi-lanes, like an interstate, the cross slope is going to be 3% in some places. All right. Now, the next thing is the curb and gutter. I am not going to mess with this. I just want to double check that the length is correct. So I'm going to use annotate. So annotate, and I am going to use linear. I'm going to snap to the endpoint here and snap to the endpoint here, and yes, it is 2. Okay. The next one is the 7-foot grass strip. So I'm going to come over here, click on it, come over here in their parameters, and I'm going to say 7 feet in the width, and I'm going to change that to 6. The reason it's 6% is basically it's to make sure that it's not it drains properly and it's not squishy when you walk across it. I've seen people do it at 1%, but I know Osceola County's code is 6. And I've also seen people approve it with 1, but let's going on. All right, now this is our sidewalk. So I'm going to change that to a width of 5. And see, it's -2, it's tilting the wrong direction. So I'm going to say 2. All right, now the last thing is I like to do, remember when we were talking about our lots? Our lot was listed as, let me escape out of that. We have a lot depth of 100 feet, okay? So I'm going to come back over here, and I want to be able to pick up at least the backs of the lots. When you're working on corridors or an assembly on a curve, you'll actually want to extend part of that because of triangulation, calculation of surface areas. Again, I can explain that later if anybody wants to know. So I'm going to make that length 105. So I'm just going to go a little bit past the length, and I'm going to put it at 1%. Now, here's the thing is Osceola County requires 1% slope, but if you're in an area that has really high groundwater table, you might want to do 2%, or if you're cutting into the ground when you have to use under drains, you might want to do 2%, all because you want your lot to drain properly, so you don't have to have under drains through a lot. All right, now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mirror it about the center line. So watch carefully. I'm going to highlight, I'm going to click, or I'm sorry, select. I'm going selecting it from right to left. So it picks everything. And notice that it brings up the contextual ribbon for your assembly. This is the mirror that you need to use. Okay. So I'm going to click on that. And then it comes down here, it says select the marker point. And basically, I'm going to pick the center marker point. And now it creates it on the other side. Okay. So that's my first assembly. Now, I'm going to create the second assembly. And it is going to be my parking. Okay, now you might have to make 3 assemblies, one for parking on the right hand side, one for parking on the left hand side, depending on how you design your roads. So I'm going to pause right here, and then we'll get to doing the other assembly and attaching it to the corridor.